Good evening, my fellow citizens. This government, as promised, has maintained the closest surveillance of the Soviet military buildup on the island of Cuba. Within the past week, unmistakable evidence has established the fact that a series of offensive missile sites is now in preparation on that imprisoned island. The purpose of these bases can be none other than to provide a nuclear strike capability against the Western Hemisphere. Each of these missiles, in short, is capable of striking Washington, D.C., the Panama Canal, Cape Canaveral, Mexico City, or any other city in the southeastern part of the United States, in Central America, or in the Caribbean area. Additional sites not yet completed appear to be designed.
One man wanted to win it all. The other had everything to lose. Together, their nuclear missiles brought the world to the edge of annihilation. The island of Cuba becomes the center of the world. Fidel Castro says the Russian missiles are for defense, but for others, they are a deadly threat. For 15 days in October 1962, the world is on edge. Will it be a countdown to World War III?
By the turn of the 21st century, when the Sikorsky H-3 Sea King entered the sunset of its illustrious career, the world was a much different place than when it began serving in the U.S. Navy over 40 years earlier.
Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
How do you measure such an astonishing moment in history? The East German government said tonight they were going to make more openings in the wall, at least a dozen more. Put bulldozers right through the wall so that more people could cross to the west.
Suddenly, the most forbidding symbol of the Cold War came tumbling down. No match for people who just wanted a chance to experience true freedom.
After the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989, and the end of the Gulf War in 1991, the United States was firmly established as the only superpower left standing from the Cold War era. It is ironic, or perhaps even fitting, but the transition from the H-3 Sea King to the H-60 Seahawk as the primary carrier-based helicopter platform began at this time as well. By the mid-1990s, only a small number of the old Sikorsky workhorses were still in operation. Stripped of their tactical equipment and redesignated as utility helicopters, they continued flying search and rescue, mail and cargo, and VIP transport missions, for yet another decade, into the 21st century. On January 27, 2006, the H-3 Sea King was ceremonially retired at Naval Air Station Norfolk, Virginia, by the Fleet Angels of HC-2. One of the oldest and most storied helicopter squadrons in naval aviation history. This marked an incredible span of 45 years of dependable and arduous service, during one of the most crucially dangerous periods in American naval history. This is the story of the amazing men and women who fought on the front lines during those years, and the remarkable machines they courageously flew.
For some, it was hard to believe the Soviets would take such a risk.
I knew that this was going to be not only historic, but possibly a confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union.
These pictures will change the world. Nuclear weapons are at the doorstep of the United States.
All of us knew that it was unprecedented, that there had never been a nuclear confrontation in the history of the world, and we were about to face one.
Within the executive committee, one idea is gaining popularity. It's an unusual scheme, using U.S. ships in a blockade of Cuba. No shots will have to be fired, at least initially. Hundreds of U.S. Navy vessels can form a ring around the island, preventing Khrushchev's ships from reaching Cuba. It can be a first step, but will it be enough?
A blockade, even if, as it would be expected, it would be fully effective in stopping any introduction of new weapons, it wouldn't itself alone do anything about getting rid of the weapons that were already in Cuba.
The U.S. armed forces have to prepare for all military options against Cuba, as the quarantine could fail. 250,000 men, hundreds of tanks, more than 1,000 aircraft are readied. Florida is put in a state of emergency, although it's officially labeled a practice maneuver.
If the American president gives in to pressure from his armed forces and mounts an attack on Cuba, then an invasion of 250,000 American troops could be stopped with one atomic bomb. Then the Americans would be dead. Their ship sunk. What would Kennedy do then? He would deploy his own nuclear weapons. But then what?
The United States is unaware that a short-range nuclear weapon is already in place on Cuba. Unlike the big bombs, these are tactical weapons designed for the battlefield. They're called Lunas. They can be used to eliminate thousands of attackers in one stroke. Could the Lunas trigger World War III?
The Americans didn't know. They didn't know anything about those tactical nuclear weapons on Cuba. If they had attacked, I believe the commander of our forces there, General Pliev, would have used those weapons.